Okay, welcome folks. This is House Corrections and Institutions Committee. It is March 26th, Thursday. It's our 8:30 meeting, and we are finishing going over the language for our capital bill. It is draft 1.1, and it was from the 24th of March. So, John, we got as far as bottom of page 10.
We were about to start page 10.
Well, just, yeah, this is the cash section. Okay. Sorry, I went right over to page 11 because I saw FY27 cash. So we'll go to page 10. And this is where we've allocated general fund dollars to our capital projects. Welcome, John.
So good morning, everyone. John Gray, Office of Legislative Counsel. If you don't mind, I'm just going to stay on the paper, if that's okay. I can pull up, but I think based on the committee.
Yeah.
So we're on page 10, draft 1.1. And this is yesterday what we completed were the bond funded sections of the bill. We also went through the reallocations, and now we are starting the cash funded pieces of the bill. I did want to flag a high level piece here, which is that in the past, as you know, when we have dealt with the cash sections, we've used very specific language to start these sections. We've said that we're authorizing as opposed to appropriating, and then essentially the process is duplicated in the appropriations committee where they make the outright appropriations that track what is done in the capital bill. So I just wanted to flag that because the budget has already moved, if you just use the language authorize here, you may not have appropriated the actual line item. So just wanted to flag that you may need to change the language. You may not, depending on the agreements that people have, but just know that if the budget passed as it currently was, and this language passed as it currently is, you wouldn't have the appropriations for these specific items.
What they did in the big bill, there is a line item that appropriates 17 million plus for these not specific projects, but it's a line item that blocks 17 million plus infrastructure.
Hey, good morning, Scott. Good morning, my fiscal office. I think the language just says transfers. Doesn't appropriate, doesn't allocate. I think it's literally said transfers from general fund to
To the
cash.
cash.
So it doesn't have any authority or anything. It just says, here's your money. Then we have to decide what we're gonna do.
So
Because usually what we end up doing is the appropriations bill will appropriate the money and they will list the projects. And we also list projects in there because people, we list it also in our bill in the end. Because if folks are looking for the project,
Exactly.
they're gonna put to the capital, not the appropriations. We
So-
do it both places.
So just flagging if that is the way that it is, you technically wouldn't have the appropriations. So you would have the funds in the cash fund, which is where you need the money, but you would need to outright appropriate. So just flagging, that's something to think about. But today we're just trying to get through the actual decisions of the projects themselves. So the first update I have is at the bottom of page 10, and it is an expansion of an FY26 funding authority for cash. That's your Vets Home design and construction of the A-wing, 1.5 million. And the expansion that you see here is to add in and sprinkler system installation. So expanding the line item itself, but not changing that FY26 cash authorization. On page 11, we have an update here. I just want to be clear. The update here was included by me as a placeholder. This is not a decision that the committee has made. I was just trying to find places to store the cash that was available. So just know that the committee's current position on page 11 for major maintenance, which you see highlighted, is still the GovRec, right?
The 1.2, it's 1.2 million.
Exactly. I added overflow cash money here just to have a place to store it, but that is not a decision that the committee has yet made. So just know that I've used that as a placeholder, but that can easily be updated. It doesn't reflect anything that the committee has committed to.
The only thing we did for major maintenance at this point was we put in an extra 500,000 bonded for FY27.
And in both the bond and cash, that's where I have stored what I'm calling the overflow, the extra unallocated funds essentially. But in both instances, that's just a placeholder. It is not committed. And the reason for that is to ensure that the aggregate totals on the first page reflect the correct aggregate totals. So the first updates you're going to see from the GovRec, because as noted yesterday, the underlying language that you see here is from the GovRec. If it's highlighted, that's a committee change. So the first updates you're going to see are on page 12, the top of page 12. And the first that you see is door control upgrades. It's set at 700K. I want to say that this was yes, because we were moving some money within the bonded sections as well. And I will pause there in case folks have questions. Look at my own separate.
Do we have, I'm trying to remember here, because I know for door controls. Did we want language to connect this to make sure that we finish the Rutland? Because there's St. Johnsbury and Rutland, folks, if you look on the spreadsheet. There's St. J and Rutland. And what I remember, they're gonna finish St. J. And whatever money's left over is gonna be added to the 500,000 that we've put in Rutland. And then this 700,000 also would go to finish Rutland, and whatever's left over, 700 will go to another facility planning. Did we want language to indicate that?
So
I would say yes.
can I offer what I recall of the discussion? So when we talked about this, one of the things we were noting was the gap in flexibility between the cash and bonded sections in terms of flexibility you would offer. And then specifically the language that was used here, door control upgrades at correctional facilities, was sufficiently broad to allow for both facilities. So at the time, you guys don't have to take my position, but at the time, my position was the generality of this language actually allows you to do exactly that. And therefore you wouldn't need unless you wanted to say exclusively use this for Rutland, I would say that this gives the flexibility to do exactly that. Right.
That's good.
The other piece that I would note here is that, and Scott had flagged this for me a couple of times, there had been a request just to reference DOC. The current language just says 2 BGS or AHS or door control upgrades at correctional facilities, which has been generally the way that these appropriations have been listed. You could include language if you just want the DOC call out to say 2 BGS or AHS or DOC or right. Sometimes we have this like triple. I don't think you need to do that, but if you wanted it, this is the place that would be included.
So I'm trying to recall how we left this conversation yesterday, or was it yesterday? About giving the commissioner of BGS more authority. Did we want her to come in to give us a more detailed thought what she's looking at? Because we did not want to give the broad authority to move. And I think we were gonna have her come in to be a little more specific on what she's looking for.
I think
Scott?
Emily was able to maybe talk about it yesterday, but we didn't get to it because of the discussion with the parking. So, but I do know that they had mentioned something about the specificity of what they were looking for.
What they were looking for, so maybe see if they can come in this morning. Because we don't want to give the broad ability to move money around, because we might as well not be here.
Yeah.
But there may be a little bit that she needs to be tweaked. Yeah. Okay, well, let's keep going.
So the next line item on page 12 is your boiler replacement. We now have at 1 million. So, split it through line items.
Before. that before. Okay.
We're good there?
Yep.
Perfect.
Because this is all tied into the 3-acre parcel piece for the stormwater ponds, and I forgot how much money they have already in the bank for the project. So we nicked them a little, cut them in half.
The remainder of page 12, as you can see, matches the GovRec.
To give a heads up to the committee, I know we're not reading this line by line, just looking at the numbers. Before we vote the bill out, we're gonna be reading it line by line. Not this draft, we're changing, but capital bill before we vote it in, we're gonna read it. Okay?
Next changes, we come to page 13.
Yeah, this one needs some work.
And this is a kind of big piece at the end here. I believe we did cut one of the GovRec cash allocation pieces. Let's see. Final piece that we have added here is installation of Wi-Fi. And I think the piece noted about working on language is just that currently it's 2 BGS for AHS to work with DOC to install Wi-Fi in state correctional facilities, 3.3 million. I don't know if folks wanted more specificity on the language.
Thanks.
We're gonna have to work on this. I had a request yesterday from the 5th floor that, we just allow this to go through the Vermont Broadband Board like we did last year. Said we did this year, we wrote a letter of support. And it was denied. And I said the committee is pretty strongly, feels quite strongly, we're gonna put money in. Because we really need Wi-Fi in our correctional facilities. We've received a letter, it's been, 2 things have been sent to our emails. Tate, they've been sent to the committee emails or not?
Most of the emails that are on the web.
They're on the webpage. So Brian found the letter that we sent in conjunction with the Energy Committee last March to the Vermont Broadband Board, supporting a $1 million request. That's on our webpage. And also I got a communication from the Agency of Digital Services on Wednesday, it was yesterday, right? Indicating why they don't support the 3.3, they don't support putting money in because there needs to be more planning. So those 2 documents are on our webpage and I want us to look through and maybe what we do, not put in the full 3.3 because that lets the broadband board off the hook. But if we put in some money and we do language indicating what ADS and DOC needs to do. It may be a way, so we'll spend some time as a committee to look at those 2 documents, the letter we sent last year and what came from ADS yesterday. As the reason why they don't want the money put in.
Oh,
Not going,
yeah, can you say a little bit more about where you think that would go if we shift this to broadband?
well, I'm not saying we zero it out.
No, I'm not hearing that either, but just, I want to know a little bit more about the motivation for this suggestion, if you have any thoughts on that.
I don't think they want the money in the capital.
Yeah.
But I indicated, the committee feels quite strongly about, we put the money in the capital bill. And what I'm wondering, let me, we find this letter from yesterday. What they're saying briefly is, they're saying the planning right now, this is coming from ADS, planning is it for this initiative is still in its early stages. Significant work remains to fully understand the scope, risks, and required safeguards necessary to implement such a system. They're concerned about the system needs to be designed to protect highly sensitive information, including criminal justice information, and also some protected health information. And, and they say ADS in partnership with DOC does support the long-term goal of enabling secure wireless connection to our facilities. However, at this stage, these fundamental elements still are being evaluated and developed. So I'm just thinking we create language around these concerns with our money. And I'm not sure if, and just leave it at that, or maybe indicate to go before the broadband board. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I am not in the early stages of this. Been in the early stages of this since I began here, and that's not acceptable to me. I'm highly motivated and committed to getting Wi-Fi. It's ridiculous that in 2026 we don't have Wi-Fi in those buildings that allow us to. And it's a workforce issue. It's an issue for the people who are housed there. I am interested in some very strong language that says we're moving beyond the early.
Totally agree.
And I can't believe that we're a forerunner in putting Wi-Fi
Right.
in correctional institutions. That
Yeah.
whether they're correctional institutions or prisons, throughout the country, probably my guess would be that most of them have Wi-Fi.
We use,
With all the same challenges that we have from a security perspective.
do you want to say anything, Connor?
No, it's a roadblock to everything we're working on right now, and we've been asking for years. So I'm really surprised we're getting the pushback that we are. It's,
So back when we were COVID, we're on Zoom, it was 2020. It's a lot of COVID money coming in. And one thing that we worked on was using some of that COVID money, that was the first round of COVID money, to work with DOC to find hotspots in each of our facilities for the future installation of Wi-Fi. So that work has already been done. And that took a couple years to do. So that's already been done. The chart that we got from ADS on Tuesday, it was 2023 monies that they were showing for that. So I think I want to push it. And I think we put in some language around the dollars. What I'm afraid of, if we put in the full 3.3 million and they want to go to the broadband board, it lets the broadband board off the hook. So I don't know. That's something we'll have to balance. Yeah.
Regarding the idea, I mean, it really feels like party or parties aren't being candid with their actual reasons for objection here. That somebody doesn't have all their fingers on the table.
Welcome to the world.
Well, this is a maybe more obvious scenario in this case.
We're living this with DCF in our juvenile facility. This is what we struggle with. We make the best decisions we can with the information we have as legislators at the time. And that will change.
So my understanding of the current request, I'm going to leave the dollar figure as is for now until I get an updated figure. But for the actual call out itself, what I might propose, because you want to keep the pedal down, is you probably want to leave the to install Wi-Fi in state correctional facilities to make it clear that it's a directive. Also to ensure that it's clear that this is a capital expenditure, right? That's helpful too, because if you just said this is a planning type,
Yeah.
without some tie, it might not seem like a capital expenditure. I would propose leaving what you have here and then expanding it basically to say install Wi-Fi in state correctional facilities, including, and then address the ADS, like,
You require
know-
ADS and DOC to work together.
yes, and I can throw in ADS here as well. And we can have some including call out to talk about the design to protect sensitive confidential information, including both criminal justice and protected health, something like that.
So look at the memo on our webpage, look at the letter that we sent last year, and then look at the memo that was sent. James?
I just add my voice, I guess.
Oh, you sound like you have a cold.
I think it's Walker's fault, but anyway,
Will you party too long? last
no.
night?
We weren't even.
I'm back home, I'm fine.
weren't even
Or you
together.
snort too much?
There's some truth there, but anyways, I'd like to see us, risk of getting myself in trouble with the wrong people, I'd like to see as strong a language as we can. I'm not saying anybody's lying, I hate feeling that way, it shouldn't be, as Joe said, I mean, Toyota jokes aside, Forerunner, that it shouldn't be this hard, and we're definitely not the first people to do it. And it has a pretty decent sized value for both incarcerated people and for the workers. I just don't understand what the delay is, and that answer may be true, but it doesn't. Like, things can be true and still don't agree with it, and I don't agree with it. So
Read what was posted on our webpage. Came from the Secretary of State C, Chief Information Officer for Agency of Digital Services.
Is it
It's on our webpage.
is it unreasonable to ask the person who drafted that letter to come in and
We've
testify?
tried, they don't want to
you
come
know,
in. We've tried.
Another,
We've been trying since Monday, Tuesday.
Can we do a report back either to Joint Justice or to these committees? I'd like some report backs, as soon as possible.
But read the memo. It was sent on the 25th, John. Read that and pull up some strong language from that. And
Sorry, what was the date of the letter?
the 25th, but it's been posted on our committee webpage today.
Okay,
And so has the letter that this committee sent to the Vermont Broadband Board last year at this time. It was about March 20th, March 19th, March 20th. We sent that letter out. Right.
So agree with the vice chair about the strongest possible language. I'm just flashing back to our request/demand for DOC to work together with, I can't remember if it was the Vermont Asylum Assistance Project or whoever. And we were told in no uncertain terms to stay on our lane. So I'm curious, like, I want to press it as far as we can without, right, so,
We have a bill to,
yeah. I'd want to make sure that we're doing it effectively, and that's all, yeah. Okay,
no, that makes sense, but we have a bill.
yes, okay.
Putting money. Okay, let's keep going because you got 4 minutes.
okay. So we would jump next to the policy sections. So maybe we can try to go relatively quickly through these. What you're going to see on the bottom of page 13, this is the DEC piece. As you'll remember, we did not include their proposed section 9, which would have deemed certain new developments kind of automatically eligible under rule or pollution abatement control. This is just addressing the advantaged loan terms for certain kinds of mobile home park water systems. And I've tried to strike a balance here between using the language that DEC is familiar with, that vague, privately owned nonprofit community type system. You'll recall that we spoke about that and there was appetite to retain it, even though it technically means nothing. I say that it doesn't mean something just as the words. It means something to those who administer it. And that's why this is being maintained here, is if folks are administering the program using this language in the way that's intended, don't accidentally disrupt what they do by adding a new defunct term. So this is a cleanup to the DEC proposed language. This aligned with what they were proposing to do. And the substance of what you can see, the proposal is really on page 15.
So before we go there, and I want more clarity on this. If you, at the bottom of 13, page 13, 10 VSA 62 of 54 is the registration process for mobile home parks.
That's correct.
So who reside in a nonprofit. And they said manufactured home community.
Yes.
That's not here.
Yes, because that's not the current term in statute.
And we're gonna wait to make sure that the other bills go through.
It actually doesn't matter either way, because if the other bill does not go through and there are no conforming updates to the statute, which is what would happen in the absence of those bills, this would be the correct term, mobile home park. If the other bill does go through, what it includes is a provision over the summer for our office to update all references to mobile home park, which would include this reference to mobile home park to be manufactured home. So
10 VSA 62 to specific for mobile home parks to register.
Yes,
Would including, say, nonprofit manufactured housing communities, if that gets through.
I,
Also, it would be pursuant to that process. Does that mean they would then be, just like mobile homes, they would have the ability to register through the same process with Department of Housing and Community Development as the mobile home parks?
this does not change anything about the registration process for mobile home parks. This just says that certain kinds of water systems that serve registered mobile home parks will be eligible for advantage.
So are if the manufactured community housing, the nonprofit, they would be registered the same as a mobile home park? Through 10 VSA
They are
6250.
They are a kind of mobile home park that would be registered with the Department of Housing and Community Development. Yes.
Make sure about that.
It's a subset of mobile home parks. That's the idea, is that certain water systems, so we're talking about subsets of things, is I think part of what's confusing here. We're talking about a certain kind of water system. It's a community water system, which means it serves a certain minimum number of folks. It's privately owned rather than municipal. And the ownership structure is that it's nonprofit owned. So that subset of water systems, it's receiving these advantaged loan terms. Water systems of that kind that serve the majority of residents within a subset of registered mobile home parks, so nonprofit or resident-owned mobile home parks, they register just as any mobile home park does. They just have a particular ownership structure. That's what this is speaking to. Subset of water systems serving subset of registered mobile home parks would be eligible for these advantaged loan terms. And I say advantaged, it's longer loan terms with lower interest rates.
Disadvantage.
So it includes co-ops too.
I
I would think resident.
Resident-owned, I would think, right.
Co-op, yeah.
I should run probably.
They can wait a few minutes.
Are you asking me to wait a few minutes to run? Okay.
I mean,
And then run
we gotta
faster.
get a bill out, just some of the others. So we gotta get some of this. And
Sure.
quickly just go through it.
Yep. So
Language we've already looked at.
yes, so what you will see here is bigger in presentation than what DEC showed you, because I wanted to give the context of the statute, and also because I identified an issue with the existing statute, which I'll describe on page 15. On line 5, you see the notwithstanding. This was not included in DOC's proposal, but it should have always been here. I added subdivision 1 to the notwithstanding language, and the reason for that is that what subdivision 5 is saying is that you may qualify for a certain term, 40-year loan term, at a certain low interest rate. In existing law, we have this notwithstanding subdivision 4, which is what speaks to the minimum interest rate. So it's obvious why you need to notwithstand that. This subdivision 5 is saying you can go even lower than what's in 4 for these particular sets of communities. The thing that was missing is that subdivision 1 speaks to a maximum term length of 30 years. And because this is allowing a 40-year loan term, you need to notwithstand that as well. So that is something that clearly has been implicit all along. It wouldn't make any sense to be extending these for 40 years with a prohibition, but you should have that. This is consistent with the substance of DEC's proposal in subdivision 5, but I think it's easier to read because we have now created this defined term, eligible mobile home park water system, instead of having the long call out to a water system that serves mobile home parks that are for residents of, such and such. We can just say those who would fall into this subdivision are, and I'm going to read from line 9, the applicant system meets the income level and annual household user cost requirements of a disadvantaged municipality. It's existing law. We're maintaining that piece. Or is an eligible mobile home park water system. That's what DEC was trying to add to this subdivision. It's just a simpler way to read it than if you include the full call out. And that's part of why I proposed just using a defined term here. It's easier to read.
So that would encompass the language on page 13 and 19,
Correct.
where you say nonprofit or resident owned.
Exactly. So generally this subdivision is saying privately owned, nonprofit, community type water systems may qualify for these special kinds of loans, 40-year lower interest rate, right? It can go down to -3%. But the condition for qualifying under this subdivision is now that you meet the income level and annual household user cost requirements, or you're an eligible mobile home park water system. You still have the other conditions. At least 80% of the residential units served by the system continuously occupied by local residents. At least 80% of the water produced is for residential use. And then that's just kicking them in to be eligible for these kinds of loans. The actual change, one of the changes that you see here is an even further grant to these kinds of water systems under subdivision C, the bottom of page 15. So starting on line 17, if the secretary determines that these privately owned nonprofit community tech systems qualify for a loan under that subdivision 5, the piece we were just talking about, they'll certify that loan term and interest rate to the Vermont Economic Development Authority. I'm going to pause and skip the new language here just to set up what the actual current is. In no instance shall the annual interest rate plus an administrative fee be less than is necessary to achieve an annual household user cost equal to 1% of the median household income. So under existing law, what you get under 5A is you can get these special terms, but they have to be certified under the subdivision C to VEDA. And in setting that interest rate, it cannot be lower than this particular setup described in C. The addition that's proposed here by DEC is to say, except for these newly eligible mobile home park water systems, they would not be subject to this same constraint. And so that's the language you see at the very bottom of the page. Except as applied to an eligible mobile home park water system, the secretary shall not certify an annual interest rate.
Yeah.
Technical legal term. Let me just make sure I am not being summoned. Page 16.
You mean when you're in some other committee, we could summon you?
If you have an appointment.
Yeah, well, it's going for them.
I'm working it, John.
You guys can try whatever you would like. I just follow the mysteries of this state
I was
house.
just building.
Good answer, John.
Page 16. This was, I think, relatively uncontroversial for you guys. I did want to flag one thing. This is the addition of solicitation of funds for the State Historic Preservation Officer.
Mhm.
So I've changed the style of the presentation here. I've created two subsections. One is with approval, you can accept and solicit these grants, gifts, donations.
Mhm.
And then added separately that, and this is requested in the GovRec, that the request for approval for solicitation, which is required, right? That's the first clause of sub A. With the approval of the Secretary of Administration, the State Historic Preservation Officer would need to specify what the project is and what the fundraising goal is.
Yeah.
The one piece I wanted to flag, and this is simple to solve, but under the state, I wanted to flag both as something for the committee to think about and something I would need to update in the drafting, which is very simple to do. The state ethics code has a prohibition on public officials soliciting gifts, right? As you can imagine, for obvious reasons. So it's easy to get around, you just not withstand that particular call out. But I just wanted to flag that that is something under the ethics code. Maybe helpful background to know is that this would not be the first time a state entity has been granted the ability to solicit funds. That's something that is present in a couple of instances. But I just wanted the committee to know that it is not as we do have existing law to address. And as you can imagine, it can have an icky feel when you have a public facing official that's both soliciting and then in control of spending the funds. I'm not saying that that's a reason not to do it. I just wanted you to be aware and know that assuming there's appetite for this, I would just add that notwithstanding to ensure that they can't get an ethics violation for doing so.
So let's flag that for the committee to talk about.
The next piece is Forest Parks and Recs. This is something that you would have heard yesterday morning from
Yes.
Mike McGrady.
And we did some work.
Yep, I'll have an update in the next draft that changes the notwithstanding language to reflect that update.
Yeah.
And he sent me the latest, so I already have it. Page 18, this was the language that the chair had requested. This is
Came
for,
from BGS.
okay.
Transfer.
So this is Southern State Correctional Facility transferring to the town of Springfield. We notwithstand the existing statutory language, which describes the way that transfers, sales, leases occur. Commissioner of BGS authorized to transfer to the town of Springfield a portion of the Southern State Correctional Facility property. And we have to call out to what that is. I'm assuming this is as specific as you can get at this point. Consisting of approximately 22.93 acres to be used for municipal purposes, including economic development as an industrial parcel. And then we have a proviso these are the contingencies that would need to be met for that transfer.
So we have to. I'm leaving it up to you, but we put in language in the 24 capital bill that allows this transfer to be done to the town for their town highway garage and public safety garage. We have to change that.
Okay.
So I don't know, we amend that, we repeal that, so that has to be.
I'll look back at that to see if we need to tweak
Right
it.
now, the reason we need this language is the previous language we put in the capital bill in 24. We transferred but for 8 different use.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
So they've renegotiated because the town was looking to use that property for a different use, and it was only 10 acres in the previous language, and this is 22 plus.
So this is a little more expansive than the original.
It's more expansive. We had testimony in from BGS and the town manager in Springfield to explain this. And then they negotiated, we didn't negotiate, BGS and the town negotiated. And this is what both parties have agreed to, but we have to amend or repeat the previous language.
Completely agree. Those are the two avenues. You could have a standalone section here and then just separately repeal that, or you could go in and just like we're adjusting all of the existing provisions from last year, you would be amending a policy provision from a
Yeah,
prior
we gotta
capital.
clean up. Gotta be real clear on that one. Clean up. this language.
The contingencies themselves are set out at the bottom of the page. State to obtain any state or local zoning or subdivision approvals required for transfer. I did, I included the word state here, but I did wonder if you want to be specific, who needs to do this? Is it BGS that needs to do this? We can just say state, but
I would send the language to the commissioner of BGS, and let's also send it to the Springfield town manager. If you email on that.
Okay. State and the town to negotiate updates to the 1999 agreement and these are fairly vague updates. I just want to flag this. I'm not sure what it means to negotiate updates that explore the maintenance and upkeep, right? Like, does that mean they have to actually commit to something, or do they just need
Because
to?
they're still negotiating.
Okay,
They're still negotiating what happens to that road that goes up there, as well as the water and sewer lines. Because there was an amendment made to this agreement that the town, if this land swap occurred, the town would take over the road. And does that also include water and sewer? So that still needs to be negotiated.
so the question I would have just from a drafting perspective is, what are the things you're committed to having considered as part of the negotiation process, and what are the things that are required to be the outcome of the negotiation? So is it negotiate updates taking into consideration maintenance and upkeep of the access road and water and sewer service lines for the facility and transferred property, or is it negotiate updates that define maintenance and upkeep of, right? Like are you committing to, we need a particular outcome? Are you saying as part of the negotiations, I need you to think about this?
So those are conversations that somebody needs a BGS, because you folks, BGS and Springfield are the ones doing this. So I think maybe, John, you need to work with the commissioner of BGS and see where we are with the town of Springfield.
Okay,
This is language that came from BGS.
Okay.
And I checked with our town manager. The town manager was fine with it. BGS is fine with it. So these nuances need to be worked through with those parties, not us.
so there's that, and also mitigate impacts to the spring, again, kind of amorphous, but sounds like those are just questions. Lastly, one of the contingencies, and this wasn't the way that it was set out in the language that I received, but it was a separate prohibition. It makes sense to have it as a contingency for the transfer to me because it has the practical same effect. Transfer to property shouldn't include any brownfields. And then on page 19, what happens if the property is transferred and nothing is done? If the town has not begun developing the transferred property for purposes of economic development by the end of March 2030, town shall consult with the Commissioner of BGS to examine alternative uses for the property. And tied to this same section, I have what you see on line 5 here, prospect of repeal of transfer authority on July 1, 2030. So if by that point nothing has happened, the authority for transfer would disappear,
So
basically.
that was part of the agreement, that was part of the language you got.
It was stylized differently, but that was what was contained, is that the transfer authority would go away on July 1, 2030. I think it's simpler just to repeal the section. So
So was there a previous land use that would make one suspect that part of the parcel could be a brownfield?
Could be. That property was used when the interstate was built.
Okay.
And that property, we called it Hojo's Pits.
Yes.
Because Howard Johnson's was at the foot. And there was a lot of gravel up there. And when the interstate was built in the early 60s, they pulled gravel from there to build the interstate and left this great big pit there. So growing up, it was called Hojo's Pits, and it was a party place. And then when they were looking for a facility in the southern state of Vermont, BTS saw this property, it was privately owned. This property, and he said it's a perfect property to build on because the soil consistency allows you to perk. It's out of the way, it's up above, you don't even see it from the road. And we purchased that property with discussions with the town at that point. That whatever acreage is not used for the correctional needs could be transferred to the community for economic development. That was part of the agreement, the 1999 agreement between the state and the town. Right.
We need a little more testimony on those parties at Hope It Fits.
And so, yes, that could be, and so if part of it is a brownfield, would the scope of the transfer just be narrowed?
It could be. I don't know. I mean, a lot of that land is not buildable because it's so steep. Part of it, the back of it. I don't think there's any brownfields up there. I don't believe. I mean, BGS would know more of that because before we built the facility, we did a lot of tests drilling in the property just to see where would be the best place to put the facility, and what environmental issues might be there. So all that testing was done back in 1997, 98, 99. All that testing was done prior to actually doing building. So BGS has all those documents from there. Because the facility was being built around 1999, 2000. So BGS did all the test scores.
Forgive the ignorance. What is brownfields? What's the definition of a brownfield?
You know where Jane L used to be in Springfield?
Oh,
Tool
yeah.
shop, that's a brownfield. You get a lot of oils and.
environmental contaminants, essentially.
In the soil.
Many different levels.
Brownfields.
Yeah.
Any old downtown,
Yeah.
80% of it's a brownfield.
Joe's backyard.
And
Any industrial place.
Many GE plants.
See, all of this is all railroads, right? So the whole,
Yeah.
the whole downtown is a brownfield, for all intents and purposes.
effective on passage.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Have you been stopped?
I mean, they're expensive.
Is it maintenance?
So you have direction enough for somewhat of another draft, but we have to really make a determination on the broadband thing, but you're gonna look at that and kind of put something together.
Yeah, I mean, I think at this point, I'm not gonna have a new draft for you by the time I come back, right?
Right.
So I think just getting committee commitments to decisions will help me bring back the most useful draft possibly.
Okay. We're gonna also try to meet this afternoon. We
Yep.
have approval to leave the floor. We're number one. Five got bumped up,
We made it up.
but I'm not sure what time.
Yep. Kate has been keeping me in the loop, so.
And you may have to be on the floor for some of
For
that.
yield bill, I'll be on the floor, but I expect you guys will be back on the floor at that point.
We're gonna long floor.
Yes.
Great.
See
Thank
you
you.
guys. Sure,
John.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Do folks want to look at the money real quick? Or do you want to take a quick read?
For which money? All the money? The specific piece of money?
Well, what we've got right now, if you look at our spreadsheet. We have put, right now, the thinking is of the excess bonded dollars, the 1.8 million. And change. We propose putting 500,000 in major maintenance of that. That would be bonded. And then the 1.3 million for the entryway here for bonded. Okay, the question is, do we want language in terms of the entryway, what that is to be used for?
Well, there was some discussion yesterday regarding that.
So what would we like for language?
I mean, the design was fine, but someone correct me otherwise, but just want to make sure that that part of that design include what's going on outside, specifically parking configurations to include ADA spots and ingress egress for truck deliveries. Both of which are clearly compromised by or displaced by the proposed entryway.
Is there anything else that folks are interested in?
Those things. For me.
Yeah, I think that's good to hear. But
Yep, agreed.
And I'm not sure if John got that language or not. You can check with him on that.
But I'd be really disappointed if they did this beautiful design and figured out the roof problem and the drainage and then didn't have an answer on that because it's.
Well, perhaps I'm being naive, but I feel like they're absolutely gonna take the truck consideration, but then decide the 2 parking spots.
Parking is not part of it.
I'm sorry?
Parking is not really been part of this, from what I've heard.
That's my large concern.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
if
think
I
we're
were
gonna solve the truck.
Yeah, if I were standing here and you were asking to fund the bill and that wasn't solved, I would be
Yeah.
opposed to it.
Yeah, yeah.
I wouldn't support a dime.
Yeah, I would agree.
As the planning.
So please plan that before it's giving you a year's head up.
The planning the structure first, not really planning too much.
Well, then, I mean, but I'm not gonna assume an argument that doesn't need to occur yet, but
Heard.
So it's for design documents. And it gets us to the beginning, it's for design documents, so we would need the language, design documents. But it's also would get us to the beginning of construction documents.
Yeah.
Okay. We need to get that language. So then the other big piece is we have not had the conversation on the recovery. 220,000.
that sounds easy to me. And no. Go through the same process everybody else.
Other folks?
I'd probably be a little less crass, but I agree with you.
There's nothing wrong with the project, but it's, again, there's a
There's a
process.
process, and if you don't follow the process, you go back to the old days you guys worked so hard to solve.
I cannot disagree. As worthy as it is, but
Yeah, that's not the.
yeah, I agree.
Yep.
Yeah.
Zero, we don't, okay. Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi is the biggie. What might be really helpful to understand some of this is for John, folks, I want you to read that letter that we sent last year, as well as the document memo that came from ADS yesterday. I think it would be helpful. We looked at the membership of the Vermont Broadband Board, and one of our colleagues is on that board. So I think it'd be really important for a few of us to reach out. Maybe Troy and I, or you and Troy. Could reach out to Laura Sebelia,
Yeah.
kind of talk about the process. Why don't you?
Yeah,
and Troy,
I'll do that.
why don't you two reach out to her? And talk to her what the process would be, and maybe she could weigh in as to why it was denied.
Sorry.
On my second part to that, I'm gonna solve it in a couple of days, unfortunately, is I don't necessarily care where the money comes from. I just want to find. So I have no problem checking and saying, which we'll do fidelity. But if they're like, no, here's why, and it doesn't look like it's gonna change, I have no problem putting the money in from our side. What else are they gonna do? We could put more money to major maintenance, but they're not gonna get to the projects anyway, so.
So why don't you two reach out to Laura, that might give us a little bit more direction. Wi-Fi. All right.
I just, it's not on if we have somebody come in and have a conversation with us and they respond with a memo and that's like end of conversation, you know? There's a lot more to this and we need to be able to sit down with the parties. And I just don't like the precedent of, we're not coming in, here's a memo instead, right? Like,
They weren't even willing.
yeah, that's not right.
Times,
Yeah.
2, 3 times they refused to come in, and then, after they knew we were putting the money in, then we got the memo. I got the email from Tate while we're on the floor. Tate says, well, I guess they heard you. Yeah, we do. So why don't you check with Laura, two of you, go. And that ties up the money, means a little bit left of cash.
Well, it depends on how much, we're not doing 3-3, so.
I just want to figure out the broadband piece first. And if there's an option there, and we put in language what ADS and DOC needs to do to address those needs, those concerns of ADS, particularly it was security issues with the system, which is understandable because there is a different security level. You're dealing with personal health care issues. You're dealing with labor issues. There's a lot in there. I want to address that. And if they are to go before the broadband board, I don't know if the board off the hook if we put in the full amount. I mean, that's the balance I'm kind of looking at this point.
And Joe's not here, he wants to get his copy, but the other thing is that, Ag said that they rotate through the grants each year. So that they don't have the 26,000. In the same way we do of basically running out. And as we talked about, I understand if nobody else is gonna go along with this, it's perfectly fine, but I have to advocate. For that 26 that was allocated to the fair, that didn't get their money, that I would like to see it still stay with them. It's only 26 grand out of all the stuff. It's not like, I don't know, breaking precedent, but if they're doing their accounting the way they are, I don't see it as anywhere near as big a problem as I started thinking it was the first day.
And they're in a better position to spend it right now, right? Than they were last year?
That's question.
Okay, all right.
So do we want to reallocate that 26? That's what we were.
Okay with it?
Yeah, I'm okay.
Yeah, just to let Scott know. So let's see if we can get BGS in here to talk about, we want to switch money. I'm wondering, do we want to shift gears real quick for Kevin? He has an amendment on a bill. He's in House Judiciary Committee. And House Judiciary Committee has asked us to take a look at it. It deals with repealing time time.
Well, actually, Kevin's asking you to look at it because when I was asked to put the amendment forward, I thought I was only be kind of speaking to judiciary, and I looked at it and I said, no, that's our committee. And so I'm the one that's coming to you because,
Well, I was asked by judiciary for us to take a look at.
well, that's fine, but I'm just saying, nobody told me to come to see us. I came to us
Right.
because we should be the ones discussing this, in my opinion. So I simply gave you what I would consider my rationale that I agree with. I can read through it and you can ask me why I believe what I say, or you can just tell me why you don't like it. But that's my purpose of giving you the talking points, because I wasn't sure I was going to get a chance to speak to it, and I'm not here tomorrow. In fact, I have to leave earlier this afternoon.
That'll be funny, but does he have to introduce himself for the record as a witness? Compared to just, we're just going formally.
Just-
I don't get to go on the hot seat.
Oh,
I just want to make sure it's.
I'm ready for you.
It's on the record.
Got the chocolate here.
Anyway, sorry.
So even though this is a rather candid and not so polite, earned time, formerly known as good time, is a well-meaning policy intended to reduce prison population. I think that's part of it. It's no longer known as good time because good time is not required. All that's required to earn a week off of your sentence per month is to avoid bad behavior. You don't have to participate in programming, you don't have to participate in services. As long as you don't engage in bad behavior, you get that 1 week. If you do engage in bad behavior, you do not forfeit any accumulation of time, as I understand it. You merely lose your week for the month. The clock starts again the following month. Victims, this is the one that really gets me. Victims and survivors overwhelmingly oppose this constant moving of the goalposts, and that it undermines the sentence finality and creates uncertainty relating to release dates. And I know that from the testimony that I heard, Vin's is maybe the major problem here is we can't keep track of who's doing what when, which blows my mind, but I won't go into that. And they feel, the victims feel like they're getting a short change. Judges and state attorneys reported distorting sentencing with unintended consequences. If the judges know there's this earned time and they think that that's going to reduce the sentence to a point that's too low, they just is the wrong word. They lengthen the sentence to account for the earned time. So it's a moving target, if you will. And the law imposes unproductive administrative burdens on an already understaffed Department of Corrections. It seems to me like there's a more straightforward way to encourage incarcerated people to behave properly and work for their own, is the right word, remediation?
Rehabilitation.
That's not what I would use. No.
No, what word would you use to
Better themselves,
better themselves, to be, yes.
rehabilitated.
So if they choose to participate, and I'm speaking from ignorance here, so forgive me, if they choose to participate in a program that allows them to learn a skill so they can come out and have a job and be productive, I would be happy to give some earned time for something like that if they successfully do that. If they come in on drugs and after being in a program, they become clean for a period of time, I would give them earned time for that. But not just because they don't break the rules. Having said that, that's where I'm standing.
Right.
I mean, the chair and you have already said it, but this is something that so typical straddles our two committees, right, between us and judiciary. So I'm looking specifically at what I consider to be our part, which is the last bullet point, which is DOC. I thought I had heard, and this is going to be anecdotal, so I'm wondering if anybody has anything on the record or anything like that, but I thought I had understood that this is useful to DOC because it is a way of incentivizing behavior. And so have we heard that DOC doesn't like it because it's imposing these burdens, or have we heard that they like it because it's good for incentivizing behavior, or have we heard both, or have we heard something else? Because I thought I understood this to be a good tool.
And that's a valid point. I felt terrible when I realized on Monday night that I was going to be on the floor Tuesday morning to give an amendment, and there hadn't been any testimony to my knowledge of hearing that. Now, let me answer that.
Yeah.
When my kids were growing up, I initiated a stack of quarters that said, okay, the beginning, like you can have these at the end unless you break my rules, and I'm going to take one away for every time you break the rules.
Sure.
I didn't give them something for being good. It's a totally different way of looking at discipline. I don't mean that in a punitive way. I mean that in an incentive way to say, here's how you need to behave to be acceptable in society. And if you don't, you're going to miss out. And a quarter is nothing, but to lose a friend because they spit at them is significant. Is that too corny?
No, I mean, I think I follow.
Okay.
Yeah, all right.
Would this apply to everyone or certain parties?
The amendment is to repeal the entire section called earned time. Yes, everyone is my understanding. Janet, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know what I'm talking about here. I'm going off of pure gut and no testimony, and that's unfair to you, committee.
Yeah, I don't know what to tell you, Kevin. I think you're right on track with this as far as as far as I know.
We had a bill that talked about forfeiture of, I think, earned time opportunities for,
Yeah, didn't Chris Pritchard have
We've
one?
already
Yeah,
carved out about 13 13 crimes that folks would not qualify for lifetime. We did that a number of years ago. We also had, prior to this earned time one that's called good time, we had meritorious good time, where they could earn an additional amount of up to 15 days if they participated in programming, if they participated in education, if they participated in any work program. And what was happening on DOC's side, it was consuming so much, it was two things happening. It was consuming so much of DOC staff to calculate all that. And the bigger issue was it was so subjective, because if you had some correctional officers that had a grievance against an inmate, and that person was participating, the correctional officer had to sign off on it, and sometimes they didn't. And then you would have a grievance filed and some legal processes would kick in. So it was really, really cumbersome, taking a lot of time, a lot of money on DOC's part. So when we shifted to this, the discussions in the committee were, we wanted to make it as simple as possible and take out the subjectivity of it and be very, very clear. And that we knew that it was a management tool that DOC needed, because for folks who are incarcerated, it's hard for them to think long-term. It's hard for them to think, well, my minimum's at a certain time. And they need little incentives along the way that they feel that they're achieving something. So if they can get 7 days, they behave. If they have a disciplinary report, because their behavior is off the charts, they're not abiding by the rules of the facility, they get a DR, they lose that earned time for that month. Those little bits of earning 7 days a month really helps folks to calm down the tension in the living units, which then helps our staff for that. Also, at sentencing time, victims are part of that discussion at times. And we made sure it was very well known that earned time could get calculated. So particularly if there's a plea bargain, the victims have to agree to that plea bargain, and they know that earned time is going to be calculated in that sentence eventually. Also, we were very clear in the legislation that victims had the ability, if they so choose, to be notified on a monthly basis or within a 3-month basis in terms of how much earned time a person has accumulated. And that would be up to the victim to make that decision if they want to be notified or not. Some want to be notified, some do not. So that's the way the structure of the contract is versus what used to be the meritorious. Also, you might want to balance this and think, we have the work camp. Granted, there aren't as many people in the work camp, though that's starting to pick up a little bit. This has been in place for 30 years. Folks who are involved in the work camp, they get a day off for every day they serve on their sentence. So if they have a 3-year sentence, and for every day that they work, they're getting a day. So if they're working for a year, a work camp, they get a year off that sentence. So, and also, the other thing, this is not connected to earned time, but again, it plays into a length of time that goes into someone's sentence. With a detainee, for every day they serve prior to their sentence gets calculated towards their sentence. So as a detainee, if they're in there for 2 years before they go to trial or a plea bargain, and their minimum sentence is 5 years, They've already served 2 of them. So that all goes into.
Yeah, no, thanks for presenting this, Kevin. I worked on this a lot, like about 15 years ago, I think.
That was American.
I was representing correctional officers, and just the way it was relayed to me is you're in an institutional setting. You have like hundreds of people who have a background of criminal history, right? Not to generalize too much. Like staying above boards just was always presented to me as being a little difficult in itself. There were an endless opportunities to do bad things, to buy drugs, to like get in a fight, to do something. And it was just described to me by the CEOs as like, it's a powder keg. And this is keeping the top on the powder keg. This way to make sure people don't do harm, And I think I have a lot of, it resonates with me, the moving the goalpost thing with the victims there. And I wonder if there's a way to get at it with more transparency in the front end. I know we're struggling with notification, but okay, this is the lowest amount of time the person could serve, assuming they do good time, right? I just worry about taking this tool away when we have understaffing, and already at capacity, because space is an issue in facilities too. I think it would be tough for me to support just without especially without hearing from frontline staff on this too, because it's their lives that are on the line every day when they go to work, right? Yeah.
If I may, it literally is a flip in the philosophy of how to manage the incarcerated population.
Mhm.
Well, you're gonna get me on my other pet peeve. I think the primary goal of DOC with incarcerated people is their safety.
Mhm.
And even though I understand you can't be 100%, that needs to be solved first so that people aren't able, I'm going to use the word able, to harm others within the facility. That if we can't get that message across to those who have been incarcerated, then we haven't done the job. If they haven't learned and decided it's a better way to treat people properly and not harm them either verbally or physically or any other way, then we've missed the most basic need. And this sounds like you're trying to keep the powder keg from exploding, and we shouldn't have a powder keg, is my point.
I mean, I guess I just asked myself,
Yeah.
Does this language make the inside of a prison a safer place or a more dangerous place? And to me, it's like, no question, this will make prison more dangerous.
And at first it may, but it shouldn't be dangerous at all. No one incarcerated has any constitutional right for privacy, except for improper search, improper cavity search. So there should be cameras everywhere that document everything that's going on. And if there's an infraction, whether it's physical or verbal or any other way, it should be dealt with immediately and should be eliminated some way to the best of our ability. We shouldn't be putting rules in to try to keep the calm. It should be discipline based on improper behavior rather than, hey, you haven't hurt anybody this week, so we're going to give you a month off, or we're going to give you a day off for this month. Or I'm sorry, a week off for this with this month. It's a flip. To accept the fact that people can't live properly with each other is, in my opinion, where the problem is.
I agree. It feels aspirational to me, right? Yeah.
Yes, and aspirational.
Yeah, no.
It's the overall writing. Thank you for listening.
Brian and then Joe.
I'm listening to the conversation between Connor and Kevin, and it seems to me that Connor is talking more about process and you're talking more about outcome, and you're disappointed with the outcome, as am I, as I assume are all of us. But then you're assuming a better outcome for the counterfactual, which we don't know. And I think when you're talking about the process, you have to look at what has traditionally been most successful. And if you look at game theory, which I studied in the context of international relations, tit for tat is what works. And so if someone misbehaves, you lose that earned time that you were going to get. when you're back on the straight and narrow, you're back to earning it. That's what proves most effective over time. And so I think you need that incentive and you need to apply it in that way, or you're working against yourself for the outcome.
And I agree with you. I'm simply suggesting that we shouldn't even be in the place that we need to get earned time for being okay.
I wish we weren't there.
Earned time should be for going above and beyond. The norm should be you will behave in prison or you will feel the pain. And I'm being blunt there.
No, I know.
I personally believe that spanking my children was the right thing to do. Before they got to a point where they were going to go and hurt someone or hurt themselves, they needed to learn that the rules are in place for their good.
Not every student's a straight A student, and for some getting to
No,
is a miracle.
No,
And
no,
that needs to
that's-
be rewarded too.
Right. And that wasn't how well they did on their tests. There's basics you have to live to be in society and avoid hurting yourself or other people.
Including effort and including improvement from whatever your baseline is.
Joe and then Troy?
Yeah, so, and I can certainly appreciate that this is a very useful tool for corrections officers. And I wouldn't want to, I don't think I'd be supportive of taking it away from them, but I would be very curious what the carve-out exemptions are for those not eligible. And I already need an answer for that right now. Because, I mean, if you've got somebody who's, you know, they're frequent flyers, they've made several different visits to a facility over the years. I mean, at a certain point, like they're not getting it.
No, it's what they've been convicted of.
Well, I understand
Let me
that.
read it to you. I can get up here because it doesn't.
I think it's murder,
Let me read it.
voluntary, no, sorry.
Let me read it to you, also get into it. Because we did that carve out and it was it was in response to victims being concerned. And we did that carve out, so we did it here.
For capital crimes primarily.
Let me read it for you, I've got to find it here. It is disqualifying offenses, murder in violation of a certain statute, voluntary manslaughter, kidnapping, lewd and lascivious conduct with a child, sexual assault, aggravated sexual assault, and aggravated sexual assault.
So,
They
This-
do not earn time.
and
Folks are convicted of those crimes.
honestly, this isn't something we're gonna resolve at a table today or even discuss it on a more granular basis. But if you've got somebody in my perspective who's, I don't know, if you somehow were incarcerated for several different drug offenses, like drug distribution offenses, at a certain point, like that individual doesn't get it. And maybe, you know, there are some other parties that should be on that exclusion list. So I would entertain some testimony to that effect. But a blanket repeal, I don't think is something I can support at this time.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's gonna surprise anybody. Certainly the sponsor of the amendment here, that I can't get behind this, and I'm not gonna go into depth on sort of the behavioral modification components of this and the difference and the nuances between, you know, operant conditioning and punishment, negative reinforcement, and the nuance of the differences between that and punishment, positive reinforcement and rewards. But those all play into this and touch on some of what Brian was talking about. And I'm not going to get into either, and I'm happy to have this conversation on the side about my thoughts on even the, you know, sentence minimums. I can talk a little bit there about how those impede rehabilitation and restoration, and how those compete with a restorative approach to incarceration, which we don't do. And I can talk a long time about the benefits that I've seen in committing to a restorative process. And my only context, I work with students, and I have for a very long time, or violating the policies that we have in place on a university campus. And I've done that at small privates, I've done that at small state institutions, and I've done that at land grant state institutions. And I know one of the reasons I've done it for so long and the job security that attaches to my job is because I know students show up on a college campus at a developmental process. And I know they're going to violate the policies, despite the fact that the policies are pretty clearly outlined. My job is to tap them on the shoulder and to say, hey, we need to reframe how you're approaching this. We need to talk about the impact that you're having on the community around you. And I take a very educational approach to doing that. I do the same with my kids. I can talk to you about times where I've had to play that role with my kids and we disagree. I don't think spankings are effective. College campus and the behavioral sort of implications of violating policies on a college campus are different than a correctional setting. I don't think the principles are at all. I think the principles work regardless. I'm incredibly committed to what it means to be a restorative institution. We are not a restorative institution, nor have we ever tried to be in the Department of Corrections. So I can't. This is there are so many reasons tied up into why I would be able to support this amendment. If we're going to consider the amendment, and I'm happy to consider the amendment, there is a myriad of testimony that I would need, and that's going to take far longer than before we can resolve this amendment with the miscellaneous judiciary bill. So I'm happy to open up that process and to start having those conversations. But yeah, I can't support this amendment to this particular bill.
James?
I would say, I'm not sure that I feel this is the right avenue for this. It's not that I don't look at this and say that some of it doesn't have merit, or that it's not worthy of consideration. I like the idea, the concept of good time, but I also, as Alice explained, that there's much more subjectivity in it, and I can use. There's not many places in society where you can't just walk out of. You're in corporate America and somebody treats you bad, you can walk out of. You can't correctional institutions. And for 13 years, I was in something else where you couldn't walk out of. It's called the military. And if you have somebody who is, let's say, playing favoritism, and it happens every day, you know, one person gets all kinds of rewards for their alleged good behavior, or they get the opportunity to go do those good behaviors. And the person who's not on the ends, not because they did anything bad, but just because they're not on the ends, doesn't get that opportunity. So it's not completely that it's not a good thing. It's human nature, and it's not the inmates that are doing the negative on that side. It's just human nature. The fact that we get drugs inside of prisons tells you that there's a problem with human nature, right? But in a bigger issue, I think that if we're going to do something like this, this would be something that I would want to look at in the future, God willing, whoever comes back next year. That would be a thing where you'd have a bill and have actual testimony that's in depth, as Troy had mentioned. And you had actual consideration, or as Connor had talked about, you know, figuring out ways to have more transparency for victims. I certainly agree with that. But I don't know that this is the right avenue. And certainly if we repealed this, then it leaves them nothing with it. They have no carrot because it's gone. And so we're not saying we're repealing it and trying to replace it with something else, and we can't right now. So for that reason, I can't support it. But it's not that I don't support the conversation at some point or in some way, but it's a much bigger, way bigger than it doesn't seem like it should be, but it is a huge conversation. So,
And I would agree with you. I will beat the drum one more time. It's unacceptable for us to just say, well, we can't keep drugs out of our prisons. That's unacceptable.
So we've had a good conversation. I don't know where we're gonna head with this. Don't know what next step to take. Just give a flavor of the committee. I'm not feeling a whole lot of support for this amendment.
Thumbs or just,
Just do thumbs, how many people would support the amendment?
I can't as it's written.
People are opposed to it. It's none two.
Thank you for hearing me out.
Opposition. Okay. So let's take a quick break. Been in here since 8:30. Let's take a 10-minute break. We have BGS with us. There's a couple questions that we've had. One pertains, and I don't know if Emily, you can weigh in on this, or the commissioner, about more specificity in terms of moving money for those projects that are like in human services or public safety. That BGS does the work for. You don't have the flexibility of moving money. We want a little bit more clarity on what the government is looking for. And then we have a question about the, for this. So, for that. So those are the two things. To co-connect with you on those. Are you ready to answer those or? Okay. Let's take a 15-minute break.